Welcome to the Wild Bob Seat and RL and Ronnie show. All I got to say about that.
You reckon we ought to take Bob some cigarettes or anything? Does he smoke or anything?
No, he don't smoke. He might
Don't
take him a cup of coffee.
A few magazines or
Might
something?
want him blankets, you know.
Yeah.
I'd say it's cold in that new jail.
Yeah. The
That new facility.
yeah. Did you read or hear that the president was setting aside and pardoning non-violent drug dealers?
Yeah, I heard that.
Yeah, the one from Knoxville, I think he was due up for release here in about so many months. So I believe he actually took 4 months off of his sentence is what he did. All things considered and good behavior and all that good stuff, he was due for release. I believe.
I wish I could get a pardon.
Yeah. Relief.
Well, I'm not a drug offender, don't reckon, but I'd like to get a pardon just to have it in my pockets, get out of jail free just in case something comes up.
We used to get them cards occasionally. Get out of jail free cards. Did you ever, you know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
But if you use them too often, they frown upon it.
And I'll tell you what I done this morning. I had an old aggravating rooster, and I thought I'd scare him. I shot him with my BB gun and killed him. Killed him with a BB gun.
You're kidding.
And I had to clean rooster this morning before daylight about it, and I cooked him. I don't know whether he'd be worth food with or not, but I wasn't going to completely lose him. I didn't mean to kill him.
Yeah.
I hit him right in the neck. He just fell over dead with a BB gun. It didn't even penetrate the skin.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Well, how about that?
I reckon I paralyzed him and he hemorrhaged or something. I don't know. But I killed a rooster with a BB gun, and I thrown a lot of rocks at him. Never did kill one.
You undoubtedly got an old BB gun.
No, it wasn't. It didn't penetrate the skin.
Well, I've got one of those Red Ryder collector whatevers, and I threw something out in the water about 10 foot out there.
Yeah.
And I never could get a shot to hit within 10 inches of where the other one hit. They'd never hit the same place. And when we was kids, we had some BB guns. Do you remember the old 1894 Daisy? It was a...
I had two Daisies. I don't know.
This is a replica of the 30-30. Looked just like a 30-30.
I didn't have one of them. I remember hearing about them, seeing them or something.
Me and my neighbor up there, we'd mowed yards and done whatever during the summer to get one, and I had to borrow $2 to go ahead and get mine.
Yeah.
We both bought them at the same time. Those things had an accuracy that was unbelievable.
I used to frog hunt with them. We used to go down on the pond. Me and my cousin took 2 inner tubes and took some backer sticks and put them together and made us a little raft, and we'd get out in the middle of the pond and shoot the frogs and with a BB gun. And if you hit them, you could kill them. And then I'd take them home and have frog legs.
Have frog legs, yeah. Well, I haven't had frog legs since, many, many years ago. My mom and dad used to, they'd go gigging. And my dad, they had caught a bullfrog, and he caught a big one. And he had put it in these here old GI lockers? Well, he had some of them, and he had put that frog in that locker. Well, I thought I'd take a peek at him,
Yep.
And I eased down, and I was about 5 or 6 year old, but I eased that door open, I looked, and I couldn't see him, so I eased it on up, and then I seen him as he went out.
Yeah.
I think he would have been a good jumping frog for that.
Calaveras County?
Yeah, for that bullfrog jumping thing. Well, what's going on local? Anything of any interest, or is it all national?
I don't know. Everything's messed up. I don't even try to keep up with it anymore. I never thought I'd ever see things in such shape. I went down and got the car tag yesterday, and while I was down there, I told them I was going to me and my boyfriend be back down there to get some marriage licenses, and they said, well, just come on. And I said, but if he backs out, can I marry my goat? Well, you never know.
Well, that I've read some articles and whatever on it, and I've had to say about it. What they do is their business, but I wish they'd left the word marriage alone. I wish they'd called it a happy couple or something else instead.
I'm tired of hearing, having everything rammed down my throat. I don't care what it is. I'm sick of hearing it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get me a girlfriend and a rebel flag and just protest all over the place. Of course, finding a girlfriend might be a problem.
Yeah. It might be a problem finding a rebel flag too.
I'll steal it.
Yeah. Well, you might steal one. I heard somewhere that somebody was selling them for $2, and after this thing come down, I think they're getting about $20 for them now.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of pickup trucks flying rebel flags lately.
I have
North
too.
Carolina last week, and I saw several good old boys run around streaming the flag in their truck.
Well, I know a few places around local that's flying them, and
I saw a picture on the WLF website, had the rebel flag on top and the U.S. flag below it.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Well, maybe that's how they're rating them anymore. But anyhow, history shows that slavery was a whole lot more. Slavery existed far longer under the American flag than it did the rebel flag.
Yeah, and it also existed in a lot more places in the United States too.
Yeah.
It's all just distraction from the mess that everything's in, and this political correctness is just it's got you to where you can't criticize anything, so you have to go along with what's happening. You can't have an opinion anymore unless they say that it's okay to have it. So we're just being used, and I'm tired of paying the bills. I don't care about that.
Yeah.
You know they're going to raise their taxes so they can pour more sand in the lake and all that other foolishness they do.
We need to hire another parks director or
we
assistant.
We need a dozen.
3 of them. I think we ought to build some more parks. We don't have enough ball fields.
What gets me is we can't pay our bills, we can't pave our roads, but we can build a park and pour sand in the lake every year.
I heard a little discussion about that road up through the Sweet Gum Flats.
Yep.
And had chug holes and whatever.
I believe it had chug holes and them people moved there too.
Well, I've been in many a strip pit that the roads are as good as anything you ever seen. They're solid. They'll carry a load. You can carry 100,000 pounds or 100,000 and never even put a track in them. That road up there with the facilities we got here, Crush Run is the cheapest. It's the byproduct of producing standard stone. But anyhow, it's the cheap stuff.
Yep.
You could go up there on the Sweet Gum Flats, and I don't know how many miles they said there was of it, but anyhow, you could rock it down, and of course we got road graders, we got everything, whatever, but you don't even have to have a road grader. I've seen this done many a time, is take an H-beam and put a cable to it and hook it behind the vehicle, and just pull that H-beam along with the Crush Run, and it'll fill up the chug holes. And when they're talking about dust, you can take calcium chloride. We used to use oil years ago, but you can take flake calcium chloride, spray, or anything you want to do, the same stuff that they spray on the road to melt ice. You can go along there and spray that road with that, and it'll draw moisture, calcium, flake calcium. It'll draw the moisture right out of the atmosphere. You can take a piece of it, just a flake of it, and lay here on the table, and give it an hour or two, and there'll be a drop of water right there. It'll dissolve, but it'll draw the moisture. And you could do that. It wouldn't be paved, but it would still be a road that you could travel.
I was glad when we got our road paved, and we didn't get our road paved after where I'm at till I was in college. But whenever my mom and daddy moved there was a dirt road. Whenever them people moved up there was a dirt road. It ain't that they ain't got what they expected to have when they bought the property. Now, I'm for paving the road, but I'm for paving the road instead of building parks and all this other stuff that they do. I understand that we bought a new Bobcat. Jerry's talking about buying a. Jerry Kidd said they'd bought a Bobcat to grade the parking lot off down there at the courthouse.
I don't know what the deal is on it. I haven't heard the details.
He claimed they spent about $20-something for a Bobcat to grade the parking lot with. And we've got a road department. I'll be able to clean their own parking lot off out there.
If they bought a skid steer for $20,000, it's got to be a used piece of equipment. You can't.
But even buying it without a bid is
that's yeah.
I don't know if that happened. I'm just going on what I was told.
Well, I'm just going by what I hear. But the
fact that we bought anything is aggravating because they can take one of them county trucks out there with a blade on it and wipe it off in a minute and go on.
Oh yeah. Oh, there's all sorts of stuff. We've come to the point in this country we expect government to do everything under the sun for us, and that's just where we're at. And well, let me go even further than that. Not only we've been led to that point by government itself. Government says that we can't do it. That we have to have government do it. Just like they had that problem with that road up there, goes into the industrial park. You know where I'm talking about, it by Triple X Highway or whatever they call it.
Yep.
That road right there, you could fix that road in a half a day. And I think they stood in limbo for a year with their hands stuck out to get a government something or another to do it.
Yeah.
And I don't know, did they pave it yet or not?
I
don't know. But anyhow, same thing as what I'm saying about these other roads. You go in there and we got the quarry and got the crush run. Lay it down there. I'll tell you what, I saw a guy take, he had a flat spot and he took and dumped block material, spread block material, took a set of bed springs, hooked them behind the vehicle, and used those bed springs and drug it up and down through there and made him a landing strip to land an airplane on. But all he did was fill up the little divots, and he could land his airplane on it.
What do you mean block material?
Block material is right down next to sand. It's
okay. You're not talking about broke up blocks. You're talking
about
no.
Okay. I'm talking about the grade of stone.
I know what you're talking about.
They used to make block, concrete block. It's not as fine as sand.
No, I know what
but
you mean.
You know what I'm talking about. But there's all sorts of ways that we can do things.
Well, we don't look for ways to save money. You know, I'm going to leave out a whole lot of this, but this year, $4 trillion and something that we used as a bailout back in 2009 and 10, saved the banks and all that. If you adjust for inflation, that's enough money to fund the New Deal, World War II, the Korean War, Vietnam, and several more programs. That's just about half of what I'm talking about. It's enough to fund every one of them things. The New Deal, mind you, as much money as we spent on building dams and stuff, we could have done all that and funded all our wars on that one bailout bunch of money to keep the banks from failing. Because the big shots, see, now that's why we ain't going to have no changes. As long as they can draw off the money and use the regulations to their benefit, why do they want to change? They're not going to allow us to change it either.
That's correct. They've made the rules to suit themselves, and it's like bailing these banks out. These banks were getting in trouble on their own through, well, of course, the government's backing them up. If you stop to look at it right now, the banks, they may, if they had failed, they would have come right back. One would have bought the other, or whatever else they would have. Well, they would have worked it out.
If they're shaky, they ought to fail.
Well, if they can't compete, yeah. But what they did, and this is going on right now. I was discussing this with a person who deals in this type of thing, and a loaning agency, they loan money, and these institutions right now are doing the same thing that we did back then. They're a little tighter right now on the requirements, but still yet they're bundling loans. they're doing this thing. They're bundling them up. They're selling them to Wells Fargo and IAG and all these other companies. So we're just working our way back to it.
Well, all these regulations end up hurting the people that can afford it the least. You remember when gas was $32.9 and every mom and pop store you saw had gas tanks, and there was 4 or 5 or 6 cut rate filling stations in this town. Everybody, if you raised the gas a penny, you couldn't get no business. If you dropped it a penny, you had a gas for it. At $32.9, and we made money selling gas at $32.9. Then they come through with all these environmental regulations. Mom and pop can't afford to do it no more on their own because just one spill will bankrupt the family.
Well, if I'm licensed,
that's over with. But Exxon and them guys, they didn't try to sell gas to the retail stores in the area like this. They sold off-brand to people, and that's why they sold their gas. Well, now they're in it big time. The big names are in it big time. They control the gas market again like they originally did. You're paying tickled to death if you're paying less than $3 a gallon for gas. I mean, you're happy to pay less than $3 a gallon. But whenever mom and pop had an oil spill in the parking lot, $10,000 would put them out of business. Exxon spilled 11 million gallons in
Valdez.
Yeah, and
and
it cost them $1 billion, I think, or several hundred million. I don't remember what it was, but the only thing they do is just raise the price of product and go on. They don't
keep
care.
on trucking
Until the regulations threaten to put Exxon out of business, we're not going to have any lessening of regulations.
Well, the regulations help the big outfit.
Yes, sir. And as long as they can manipulate government to their benefit, there's going to be no changes. When it gets to the point where it bites them, then we'll see some changes. It's going to get more restrictive and more expensive to live right on and on.
It's getting to the point, or it already has got there, that the individual out here cannot get started.
Yeah.
They've got him to where that he's got to become a member of the
Fortune 500.
Yeah, the establishment, whatever. I was listening to a thing of what they was talking about there in Greece, and they stated that 40% of the working people in Greece work for the government. Okay, this has went on for a spell, a pretty good while.
More than that, in this country work for the government if you count food stamps and welfare.
Well, they don't work. They get they're paid.
Depending on them for their pay.
Yeah. They're for their livelihood.
They show up to vote. That's their job.
In Greece, if you've got 40% of the population working for the government, directly or whatever, then as they retire, you've got a large percentage that are retired. They're not working for the government, but they are being provided for by the government in retirement. And I think this retirement thing is what's beginning to bite Greece real bad.
I don't think they work much when they show up.
America has went to the same thing, just on a larger scale, with what we owe. And I think maybe what America should do, and I think this county might ought to do the same thing. Greece has pretty much demanded that the rest of the European states over there, I think especially Germany, they've asked that they, or I'm going to say, I use the word ask, but I think they've pretty much demanded that Germany and some of the other countries there forgive their debt. Not only forgive their debt, but give them another $60 billion over the next 3 years. So
I don't see anything wrong with that.
I don't either. I think, well, why can't America do the same thing? Why don't we just tell, well, China holds $1 trillion and some dollars, and I think Japan's got $1 trillion of our debt, and a few other countries. But I don't know who's got the rest of it, because we're owing something like $18 trillion. So I guess the American...
We've got $100 trillion promised.
Well, we've got that promise, but right now we've got in excess of $18 trillion that we owe in hard stuff, like in American citizens that have bought treasury notes and whatever else. So if we were to call in, if they were to call in their debt, well, we'd just be insolvent.
Well, we are insolvent. We just don't know it.
We just don't know it. I heard a little bit of a thing, and I didn't listen to all of it, but it had to do with the penny and the nickel. And Paul Ryan, have you listened to that video he's got out?
Not Paul Ryan.
Not Paul. Yeah? No?
Not
Rand.
Not Rand Paul, but Ron Paul.
Ron Paul, yeah. Okay. The guy, he's from Kentucky, isn't he?
Yeah.
But anyhow.
Well, no, Paul. Paul is a senator from Kentucky. Ron Paul is from Texas.
Okay.
That's his daddy.
But the thing, the illustration he showed was a penny.
Yep.
And it's telling how it cost the government 2 cents to make 1 cent.
Yeah, and a dime to make a nickel.
Well, yeah, it cost a dime to make a nickel. So, but then the penny has got something inside. It looks like it's made out of cornflakes. I reckon the thing's falling apart, ain't it? If you leave it in your car and it gets hot.
I don't know. It's got zinc in it.
Well, I think there's something else mixed into it that's even less valuable than zinc.
Yeah.
But they're falling apart.
I saw a picture of one that looked like it'd been a rat hole. Is that what
yeah,
you're talking
that's
about?
what I'm talking about.
I didn't read it.
Well, I didn't read all of it, and I didn't understand what was in it. But
I never was as surprised as I pitched a penny on the stove one time. Pot belly, well, not a pot belly, but a coal burning stove. I just pitched a penny on there. You do that, you know, foolish. You pitch it on the stove, and it gets hot. And I pitched it on the stove, and the rascal melted.
It did?
Yeah, you melted new pennies on the stove.
Oh, I figured it exploded. What is there popcorn inside of it?
I don't know what they got in now, but the ones they were making 10 years ago, you pitch them on the stove and it'll melt. You never been melting no copper.
I'll tell you what, copper, high-grade copper, boy, is hard to melt.
I know, but
it's hard to melt, buddy.
Coated.
Well,
them old ones,
is it actually copper coated anymore?
I don't know, but the zinc, they got a zinc slug with a copper sheath on it and stamped. That's the way they've been making pennies for several years, and they will absolutely melt on the stove.
Well,
I never did see a copper penny melt.
The bottom line of what they were saying
with a torch
is that all economic systems in countries that have gotten away from what we call the gold standard has eventually gone under. And like on this bailout, what we did is we just printed more money.
Yeah.
We didn't, if the American citizens, if they'd have come out here and said, hey, we're going to take $1 trillion from the populace, boy, there'd have been an outcry. They would have been big trouble. But
I can't figure out why we ain't got runaway inflation. That puzzles me.
Well, we actually, let me think a minute. We do have inflation, and I don't know whether you call it runaway or not, but we have inflation. But the where they're sending out what I call false signals is the fact that they don't classify our commodities in the cost, in the rate of inflation.
Anything that you have to have, they don't count.
That's right, they don't count it.
Why have we not got double-digit inflation? Because we've doubled or tripled the money supply.
We probably do have, and we just don't see it.
Well, why can't we see it? I'll make that my question.
Okay, because just like what we said here, they're not figuring in the cost of food, heating oil.
Well, I know, but if you remember back in the 70s, things was going up in a hurry and you felt it. But right now, you know, you don't notice it so much. Well, we've got to expect, we've seen a lot of increase in food prices.
Well,
more than anything else.
Okay.
That's got to do with ethanol.
Cement, which is the key that holds this country together. Last year, the cost of cement went up $8 a ton. This year, it's already gone up $10 a ton.
How much is it a ton total?
It's about $120-some a ton now.
So it went up about 5%, 4.5%.
Well, if over the last 2 years, if you back up, we're talking about 10%. So when you add that in, And I believe building materials have done something probably along the same lines. But you don't go out and buy this every day. You go out and buy milk, but not that.
Metal prices have gone down. It might be because we're not doing as much heavy manufacturing as we used to.
Mm-hmm.
But metal prices have gone down. When I say gone down, they've actually slowly, I'm talking about roofing metal mostly, slowly dropped just a little, but the fact that they've not gone up any is amazing in itself.
What about wood products?
Wood, it's been fairly stable, but they've gone up a lot over the last 10, 15 years, but just recently there ain't been no massive jumps, probably because the building industry took such a lick back 5, 6, 8 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Well, I've heard we've done a little business, some loggers and stuff, and from what they're saying is logging just barely is surviving. You can't hardly make enough to.
I wonder why. You know, wood prices the bottom ain't fell out of them.
Well,
of course, you got a lot of regulations as to what
the regulations is the killer. My understanding is that the what is it they call the word? It's a little 4-letter word they call for the category they put you in for your workman's compensation.
No.
And I believe they said in Kentucky right now that for every dollar you put in wages, you have to put $1 in comp.
Yeah.
And that's, if you're paying a guy $15 an hour, you got to send 15 more to the insurance company.
Well, another thing you look at too is all the little sawmills are gone because the EPA says that sawdust is a pollutant.
Well, what they're saying is the water that comes off the sawdust is what pollutes, and that's getting even tighter as of let's see, this is July. I believe August the 28th is when this new EPA rule goes in concerning water, what's called runoff or whatever else. And some people are saying it don't mean anything, but whenever they're talking about open ditches, especially in farming, and they say it's not going to pertain to it. But if I'm not mistaken, and I'd like to read the law of what it says, but I believe it says that any water that feeds into navigable waters, which
means a mud hole in the yard.
That means any drop of water that runs off
the porch is a navigable water.
Well, it'll eventually go to navigable water.
So it makes it part of the cover.
That's correct. And I don't know. I know there's a lot of rules out there right now in farming, and I don't know all of them, but there's a lot of farmers that have to keep their cattle back away, especially if you've got a running creek. You can't let cattle get to it.
Everybody used to want to farm with a branch or a creek or a spring.
Right, a water supply.
Now it's a curse. It's an absolute curse.
Yeah.
It's federal property now.
We have a water that goes through our area, but I tell you, the EPA can wear you out on that water. The regulations go back to if you have X much water rainfall with so many hours that you've got to run all these tests and take them, have them to the lab, and have the results turned in and all this stuff. So anyhow, it's all this useless trivia.
Well, I have never figured out what comes out of motor oil and goes into the ground that didn't come out of the ground originally.
True.
I've never figured out what runs off of out of the gravels and goes in the creek. It didn't come out of the creek initially.
Originally.
And something else, I can't figure out how we're going to eat if we don't stir up a little dust.
Going to be interesting. Going to be interesting. Just like
we've got these damn fools that are out there. They don't care whether the people starve or die from disease or whatever, as long as we keep the earth pristine. And Mother Earth is Gaia is who we've got to worship now. These people ought to be set out on a rock and made to survive on their own. They think all food comes from a store. All stores get their food on a truck, and that's as far back as they think. And the truck don't need to be running on the road. They need to figure out some way to teleport it or something.
My wife was doing something the other day. She was fixing a meal, and it had to do with vegetables or something. And this has always been a thing that people never take into consideration what's involved. And I was kind of talking to her about what she was doing. She was either peeling or doing something. She had took the product, and it may have been corn or something, but anyhow, just the part that she was doing took a lot of effort and time to prepare a meal and put it on the table or whatever. But the part that she was doing, if you follow backwards to where that this was put in the ground, some farmer or some person had to plant it, deal with it, deal with nature and the crows and everything else just to get to the point to where that she was preparing it for the table. And whenever we go down here to the restaurant and we order anything, I don't care what it is, especially if it has meat in it, somebody has had to, if you chase that thing all the way back, it's unbelievable what it takes to put a piece of course, we don't ever get to eat steak hardly, but...
You ever thought about a pencil?
A pencil?
This and this.
What it takes to make a pencil?
Yeah.
This used to be my thinking years ago.
This is Milton Friedman.
We need an understanding of the real nature of freedom, economic and political, and the interrelationship between the two. We need really to have a greater understanding of the kind of system,
Let's see if I can get
the kind of principle that have enabled us to get this great achievement of the past 200 years. We need to understand how it is that a free market works to enable millions of people to cooperate peacefully together. I know no better way to bring this out than by a very simple example that I owe to an old friend of mine, Leonard Reed, who once wrote a little article called I the Pencil. This is the only prop I have for this TV show. As you can see, it's a plain yellow pencil. Said Leonard Reed in his article, you know, it's a funny thing, he said, there's nobody in the world who knows how to make a pencil. Now that seems like a silly thing to say, isn't it? This is just the most obvious thing. It's only a piece of wood with something black in the middle and the little red tip at the end. What do you mean nobody knows how to make a pencil? Well, suppose you were to start to set out to make a pencil. First of all, you have to get some wood, don't you? Where do you get the wood? You have to go to the Pacific Northwest probably and cut down some trees.
It takes a special
How do you cut down some trees? You have to have some saws to cut it with. Where do you get the saws? You have to have some steel. Where do you get the steel? You have to have a steel mill. In order to have the steel mill, you have to get the iron ore, and you can add all the rest. So in order to know how to make a pencil, you would have to know everything there is to know about how to start from iron ore and coal and get iron and convert it into saws and cut down trees. But that's only the beginning. This black stuff in the middle that we call lead isn't lead. It's graphite, I think. I'm not absolutely sure. And I am told it comes from some mines in South America. So in order to get that black stuff in between, you would have to take a trip down to South America and know all about how to extract graphite from the mines in South America. Now this little red tip at the top, that's rubber. Where's it come from? Well, the major source of natural rubber is Malaya. That's quite another distance. And I don't know how many of you know that the rubber tree was not native to Malaysia. It was originally imported into Malaysia by private enterprises trying to make some money, and they transplanted it from somewhere in South America. I think it was Brazil, but I don't guarantee that. And they brought it over into Malaysia and established the plantations there and got this rubber. So somehow or other, in order to make a pencil, you'd have to know about the rubber. Now there's a little brass tip around here, and I've run out of my own technological knowledge. I don't have the slightest idea where that comes from, though there are probably people in the audience who could tell us. Nobody knows how to make a pencil. But the miracle of this pencil isn't that nobody knows how to make it. The miracle of the pencil is, how did it get made? Who told that fella over in Malaya to tap his tree and send a little bit of rubber over here to put at the end of this pencil so I could have a pencil in my hand? What's happened? What is it that has enabled this little elementary transaction to take place? I'm not sure what the price of this thing is nowadays. These things change so fast.
Used to get them for 2 cents, couldn't you?
When I first started hearing about this story,
Maybe
it was
a
a
nickel.
nickel pencil, but that won't do anymore. It's probably 2 for a quarter or 15 cents a piece. But what happens when I go down the store and I put down a quarter and get 2 of these pencils? I am trading with thousands of people all over the world. People in Washington State who are cutting down trees, people in South America, people over in Malaya. I'm making a deal with them. I'm saying to them indirectly, I'll give you 2 minutes of talk for 2 of these pencils. In fact, I hope I've underpriced myself in that calculation.
Yeah, I believe you got that wrong.
Now, how is that brought about? Is there some commissar sitting in some central office who is sending out orders to these people in Malaya, to these people in South America, to the people in Washington? How is it that they are led to cooperate with one another?
This is something I always
That's
thought
the
about.
miracle
It's
of the
always in the
prices.
back of my head.
Because note, these thousands of people who have been led to engage in this simple transaction with me, not one of them has been forced to do it. Nobody has had a gun to his head. They've all done it. Why? Because each one of them thinks he's better off in this transaction. And somehow or other, I've done it because I think I'm better off. Everybody has benefited. There's been no central direction. These people who have cooperated with one another don't speak the same language. They're people of all different religions. They may hate one another in every respect. But this hasn't prevented them somehow or other from being led to cooperate together. It hasn't prevented some kind of a wonderful machinery from bringing together these various components all together into this little pencil. What is that machinery? What is it that has induced people to do this? How has it been brought about? That machinery is the price system. That machinery is what the story is all about. That machinery is what enabled the United States to develop as it did. Because it's this price system which has the great virtue that it doesn't require any central direction. It doesn't require any commissars. It doesn't require people to be able to talk the same language. It doesn't require people to be of the same religion. In fact, the beauty of the price system is that when you buy this pencil, you have no idea the religion of the people who went into it, whose work went into it. When you buy your daily bread, you don't know whether the wheat was grown by a black man or a white man, by a Chinaman or an Indian or anybody else. And as a result, the price system enables you to have cooperation among millions of people peacefully, cooperating on one little phase of their life, while each one goes about his own business in respect of everything else. It works so well, it works so efficiently, that ordinarily we're not aware of it. It's like your car. It never occurs to you what a complicated business it is until 3 o'clock in the morning on a dark road it stops functioning. And then you suddenly realize it's a complicated mechanism. And it's the same way with the price system.
What do you think?
I think that what he's saying, of course, is proven. But where we get the thing screwed up is when the government gets in the middle of the stupid thing.
When you get anybody planning, whether it's government, planners don't plan, they just make a mess. Looks good on paper. Looks good on paper.
Okay,
don't work.
What he says right here, what we're going to have to do is change the way that we select leaders.
Well, it ain't going to happen.
No, it ain't going to happen. But I'm sick of the thing called elect anymore. I'm looking, but anyhow.
Even if you believe it's a straight up and down thing, you don't get to vote for who you want to. You get to vote for who they'll let you vote for.
That's a good point too.
And you don't get nothing from that. I mean, if I wanted to elect a certain type person or a certain person, and they throw in somebody that's just completely worse and different and nothing, no shared interest or expectations, and say I can vote for them or not vote, I mean, what choice have I got then?
Well, there's something, another subject I'll bring up here in just a minute. It's kind of a whatever, but to me, what he's saying here, this was always a game to me. I used to do this just for a game. I don't care what I looked at, I would start tracing it backwards.
Yeah, I've done that too.
Have you done that?
Yeah, buddy.
And that's basically what he does, what he's doing here.
I always thought about how hard it would be to engineer a car wreck too.
Engineer a car wreck?
Yeah, how are you going to get two people to leave home at exactly the right time, the right road conditions and everything and plan a wreck? You can't do it.
You can't do it. Well, I used to have people that I'd have an engine and it scattered all over the place, you know. How in the world are you ever going to do this or that? What I'm doing is simple. The guy that designed that thing, and of course the first one wasn't as efficient or whatever, but the people who designed this thing, the centrifugal forces, all of the technology that went into designing it, that's the guy that had the smarts.
I'll tell you what gets me is right now, people talk about how wonderful technology is, and do you realize that if you went to a place where they had no, say they didn't have a transistor, and you took them and gave them a transistor, they know it works, but they can't build it.
They can't reproduce it.
And to take in an IC with the density we've got, just a few atoms is all there are in a transistor anymore. They've got they're down to several times smaller, orders of magnitude smaller than a hair.
Right.
And we're able to manufacture that, mass produce that. Well, you give that technology to somebody and they wouldn't take it back and give it to Davy Crockett. What in the world would he do with it? He couldn't make one of them.
To me, of course, they told me, I took computer classes, and they told me I'd never learned to run a computer because I always wanted to ask why and how. And they told me that you cannot do this. You've got to accept the fact that it does it, but not try to go back through the other part, and that creates me a problem.
You can have a cousin that couldn't figure out how a computer could have memory.
But
I told him that a light switch had memory too, and he thought I was crazy.
Yeah,
he didn't have to remember where they on or off, and it's the same thing.
But to me, what you're speaking of, like the size of a transistor and whatever, this is, I don't know whether you call it intimidating or whatever, because I cannot grasp the ingenuity and whatever that has went in to doing this.
At one time, 40 years ago or longer, Fairchild made transistors in several different plants. We're not talking about the stuff they're doing now. They're much more dense and sensitive, but just transistors. And they had these two particular, just one transistor that they were making in two different plants, one in Texas and one in Chicago. And they were made exactly the same, but they had different characteristics, and they couldn't figure out why the Chicago transistor had different characteristics than the Texas transistor. Till they finally figured out that they were downwind from the Chicago stockyard. And despite all their filtration systems and cleanness, I mean they're cleaner than much cleaner than the hospital and one of these things, but and more so now than they were then. But despite all their filtration systems and stuff, they were still getting enough odor from the Chicago stockyards that there were a few molecules of that odor getting into the substrate for the transistor, and it changed the characteristics of the transistor.
Now
That's sensitive.
This is the kind of stuff, like I say, that gets so far above me. And at one time, I thought I could kick back like an old Mack truck or whatever. I knew every part of it, the size of wrench it took to get to work on it.
Me too. Not a Mack truck, but
yeah. But anyhow, and then everything changed. We went from that vehicle to another vehicle, and up the Caterpillar engine, up through the advanced truck or whatever. But everything was, and now it was computered. The first ones, they only had one computer.
Yeah.
Now the trucks have got 3 computers, and this is useless trivia, but anybody that's ever been stuck in a mud hole, these trucks, if you get one out here and it shows to spin in one wheel, it'll apply brake to that wheel that's a spinning and make it transfer and equal out the torque. And, you know,
the thing about it is, we have computer systems so elaborate right now that when you buy a car, when something goes wrong, you ought to be able to push a button and he'll tell you exactly what to fix.
The trucks will do that now.
Well, we should have that tech, and it is available, but it's not available to the people who buy the car because they don't want us to know that.
Okay.
They reserve that for their. I think that's a monopolistic way of doing business, but right now, just like you said, I drive this old 77 Chevrolet truck out here that I can get under the hood and work on, but you bring me a new car in here, and I might be able to figure out what's wrong with it. But
if it's got a flat tire?
Well, no, if it won't run, you know, it's pretty common. There's still internal combustion. You know what's wrong with it, but that don't mean you can fix it.
No.
If you don't know where a map sensor is, just because you know it's bad, don't mean you can fix it.
Well,
and finding the things is complicated.
Yeah. My truck alternator went out on it the other day, and I have been educated here in the last few days. And I went to check something, and it just kind of warped my mind. Disconnected the ground totally. I'm talking about no chassis ground, nothing. Went in and checked the alternator line and got a reading of voltage. And I said, that can't be right. And then it went back through my head. Somewhere in this system is a battery. And I'm not talking about the battery that starts the vehicle, but somewhere within the computer.
There's a backup battery for the computer.
Right. There's a battery somewhere into this thing that's giving me a reading. And that was part of my aggravation part of the thing. But another thing I learned, of course, we're talking useless trivia now, but alternators.
You may have somebody out there who wants to work on their car.
Well, there was something I learned that as much equipment as I've messed with that I never did know, but on an alternator, you've got a certain amount of AC current coming back to your battery. Did you ever hear of that? In your diodes,
Leakage.
Yeah, you've got a certain, see, your alternators creating AC current, sending it back to your diodes, they're switching to DC.
Yep.
Okay, within this thing, you get a leakage.
You also get an RF pickup over the lines, but I don't think you're talking at high frequency.
What I'm talking about is these diodes are not converting us very small amount of AC that's getting back through your line, and it's going back to the battery. The battery can't store it, but it's going back there, and it's a half a millivolt.
Well, for all practical purposes, it ignores it.
Yeah, millivolt. But this will tell you if you start getting higher readings on your AC coming back to your battery, means that your diodes are not. It's bypassing your diodes. Your AC is, instead of getting converted to DC.
Well, a diode either becomes an open circuit or a short circuit.
Right.
And what it's supposed to be is a short circuit in one direction.
Right.
And that's what it does. It just chops. You get a real choppy DC voltage out of one diode. You just get peak and all on and off, on and off. Anyway, look, folks,
go ahead.
We're going to have to talk about Vital Care. If you need medical transport, call 562-9370. They are good people to deal with. They are not funded by tax dollars. They earn the money. They have to please you or go out of business, and so far they're not in danger of going out of business. So you'll be happy. Hopefully you won't need any medical transport, but if you do, you'll be happy and glad, in fact, that you've chosen Vital Care. 562-9370, or call 911 and request Vital Care. Also, Digger Wilson down here selling propane right in the middle of the road in Sawmill Holler, 562-5444. He's got propane for your grill, and your whole campsite can run off of propane, even your refrigerator if you get set up right. Digger's a good man to deal with, and we recommend him highly. I know a fella that runs forklifts off his product. I don't want to call any names. 562-5444. And I guess I ought to tell you that if you get the one, you've been listening to all this mechanic stuff and you figure you're qualified to go work on all these cars, you need some parts, you need to go up to Napa across from IGA, 562-2529, and they have got parts for all your needs in vehicles, and they're good to do business with, and they're local too, although they are connected to a big outfit so they can get the parts and they need them. You're still dealing with a local guy, and he'll treat you like family. Randy Spradling, 562-2529. Thank you, folks.
All good local people that they do a good service. They put out something here that we need.
They're just trying to make a living and doing it by earning their money.
It goes back to what this guy's talking about, the pencil.
Yep.
Everybody's cooperating, and if that ambulance needs something on there, he can get something to do it. And
can you imagine what you would end up with if you tried to take a planning commission and build a pencil?
Oh, Lord.
Why do they think they can tell us how to build roads and highways? Why do they think they can tell us how to build our house and where to put it and what color to paint?
This country was built without them.
Yeah,
and whenever we started doing
fail because of them too.
Let me put something on you.
Just like the Soviet Union did. They planned everything, couldn't feed themselves.
A piece of philosophy. The other night, this goes back to the flag. This congressman down there in South Carolina, I ain't talking about the one that went to crying and blowing snot or whatever. I'm talking about the guy. He was a colored guy. But he come
an African American.
Well, what the hell ever you want to call it. Anyhow, he got up and he started off his speech, said that if it wasn't for something, I don't know whether it was the war or whatever it was, he would have been a slave. And that put me to thinking about something, about slaves. Mm-hmm. I thought to myself, no, he wouldn't be a slave, because there's a key element involved in being a slave. And that is, they got to be some idiot out there that's willing to pay $2 for him.
Yeah.
And there ain't an idiot out there that would have paid $1 for that piece of, because I guarantee you, a day's work would have killed him.
Well,
so who would have bought him?
We have created a whole class of people that expect the world owes them a living. And you know, I've said this for a long time. They think there was a proposition up one time to give every black person in America $1 million as compensation for the slaves that their family had been, even if they were like Barack Obama, and none of his family had ever been slaves, unless it was through the white side. But anyway, I said, okay, that's just fine with me. I think we ought to give them everyone some. I think we ought to. But my people, some of them were Cherokee, and we were here first. And I want rent from every one of them suckers for the whole time they've been here since 1619, 1628, or whenever it was they first brought the slaves over, to a black man. The first slaves in America were owned by black men. But anyway, I just as long as they pay the rent, I give them their million, and I'll take my 14 million. We'll all be even.
There you go. But anyhow, I thought that was kind of interesting.
They ain't a black man in this country that wouldn't be worse off in Africa than he is here.
Okay, that's another statement. I asked somebody the other day, and I ain't trying to be facetious or whatever, but you show me one colored person, or whatever word you want to use to indicate people of a darker complexion or whatever, you show me one that would be willing right now to go back to Africa. For any reason. Even if you pay them to go back, I don't believe they would. Nope. So actually, inadvertently, maybe it wasn't willingly, or well, I'm sure it wasn't, but they're still better off by just the circumstances and the way things worked out. They're still better off.
Well, we have had slaves of all colors and ethnicities throughout history.
The Indians even had slaves.
Yeah.
Sure did.
Well, we had slaves. It had nothing to do with skin color. It had to do with when you got conquered, you became a slave. The Jews,
I believe back in biblical days, they done the same thing.
The Jews spent 400 years in slavery in Egypt.
Yeah, but anyhow, I think a lot of the stuff is to divert us from really thinking, looking, and whatever else.
I just can't see no help. I really can't. I mean, you better just grab you a piece for yourself and hide out and lay low, 'cause you ain't gonna. It's not repairable with until things get so bad that that the right people decide we need to fix it. It ain't gonna happen. It ain't gonna happen in my life.
Well, not in mine either. I don't believe it, and I dread to see what it would take in order to turn around what we're looking at. It's like the election that's coming up. This thing, it's going to be, I don't know what you call it. It's a sideshow to a certain extent.
You look at the promises the Republicans made. If we get in, we're going to do all this.
Oh,
and they
Lord.
ain't done nothing. They
Well,
ain't going to do anything.
I hear some people talk. I heard one the other night, and he's got all kinds of great things we need, we'll do, whatever. And then I ask myself, there ain't no way that he can deliver on what he's saying. He might have his heart in the right place, but he's going up against an establishment, and be it Democrat, Republican, or whatever, and it's not going to, he can't do it.
Let me ask you a question. Could you give me the 3 top hindrances to your business?
Right now, it's, well, let me back up and think.
Let me throw something at you. You see if you agree. EPA, OSHA, and Clean Water Act.
Right now, these things right here, that what you're saying is, we're having to, I don't know how to say it, but OSHA can shut down practically any business in this country. They've got rules. There's pages and pages of them that we can't even read.
Yeah. Okay. So
you know.
You do
so
think those 3 agencies?
Yeah.
You know what political persuasion we had as a president when those things were enacted?
I believe it was Nixon. I believe, wasn't it?
Well, Nixon and George H.W.
Okay.
We had Republicans in the White House when all 3 of those agencies and laws were enacted, created.
I understand that we need regulations, no doubt about it. We need to. I don't think there's anyone out there that would argue that we do need to protect the water and the air and whatever else. But there's certain level. Let's talk about real things. Whenever they come back to protecting the air, we have got to the point on our big engines that Caterpillar will no longer build an engine. They quit back when the Tier 4 engine came in for highway use in the United States. They build an engine that can be used in other countries. And
here's the thing. Right now, the air and the water are the cleanest they've ever been in the lifetime of anybody now alive.
Right. But whenever I get to thinking about things, I think about Oak Ridge down here, and all these. We got 3, I think, major national laboratories. But I don't see why they don't solve these problems. Rather than, it's kind of like the president just sent down some sort of an executive order that says that all trucks, starting from the heavy pickups up to the bigger trucks, must get better mileage. And the number he set out there, I think, is outrageous. I can't remember what it is. Our trucks will get 5 to 6 miles to the gallon. Now, it's you can only get so much energy out of a drop of fuel.
I think that since laws always work, we should pass a law against killing people, and that would eliminate the gun problem.
Yeah.
We should pass a law that gives everybody a minimum wage of $100 an hour, and that'll take care of poverty. And we ought to pass a law that every car has to get 1,600 miles to the gallon.
Well,
and then we're done. We just go on to the house, and the thing's just going to. Why not do that? Laws take care of everything.
We're working our way toward it, and it's.
And I think they ought to make all airplanes solar powered.
Yeah, and all people pretty.
Well, I wouldn't go that far.
Well, but anyhow,
there'd be people we wouldn't stand out if everybody else is pretty.
well, the bottom line is, the only thing I see that we can do any more to equipment is we're going to have to make it lighter.
Well, we're going to have to turn our equipment off and go to the house too.
Well, suits me. I've got some chores to do anyhow.
It's been a pleasure. Let's see if I can save this thing this time. I messed up last week and deleted it.